All right, everybody. Welcome back to episode 67 of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. Ryan, how are you? You're looking good today. What a week of sports it's been. I think Ryan and I can both attest. There has been a lot that has happened since we filmed our last podcast 6 or 7 days ago. I don't know if you remember.
Yep.
We're going to kick this one off with a little NFL discussion, Ryan, as the NFL regular season heads to the final 6 weeks. We still have some bye weeks. I've never understood how the NFL does their bye weeks. I don't
Oh,
really
yeah.
like it, if I'm being honest with you. But we are approaching week 13 of the NFL season, and we'll begin this podcast with a discussion of some teams that Ryan and I felt like discussing. So Ryan, take it away.
Ah, well, I don't know which one to start with. I think, Trevor, I wanted to talk about two different teams, but I'm going to start off with the Los Angeles Rams, if that's okay with you.
No,
Um,
I'm good with talking about them.
so yeah, I'm sure you are because they are struggling, Trevor. Look, I want to talk about the Rams because I don't know. I feel like they've kind of done what I sort of expected. I think that people have been overhyping not only the Rams' recent acquisitions, but the Rams' acquisitions throughout the last few months. And I'm going to highlight in particular Matthew Stafford. And I know Trevor and I have talked about this a little bit off the podcast. I just think that like the offseason hype, him getting out of Detroit, there was this sort of allure to Matthew Stafford. This draw towards Matthew Stafford that I thought was a little bit unwarranted. Because look, he's a good quarterback. And again, I've talked with Trevor about this before, but I feel like I could name at least 12 to 14 quarterbacks that I'd rather have right now than Matthew Stafford. I think that sure he put up 300 yards and 3 TDs with one pick against Green Bay, but the vast majority of that was in garbage time, Trevor. I mean, they were down by I believe 19 heading into the fourth, 20, something like that, 21. The game was over. I mean, they weren't going to win. The score is a lot closer than it actually was. And I feel like when I've watched Matthew Stafford this year, he's been pretty inaccurate, Trevor, a lot of the times. And the first time I noticed it was against Seattle. I remember this was it was like 6 weeks ago. And he was throwing behind guys. He wasn't hitting them when they were open. And those were kind of the warning signs for me. And ever since then, I feel like he's really had some accuracy problems. And it continues to show. I remember one play, I believe, oh man, I think it was against the 49ers 2 weeks ago, Trevor. He runs at least 3 or 4 yards past the line of scrimmage and then tries to run back behind the line to throw it. Like, what are you doing? You've been in the league for 10 years, and you make an idiotic play like that. It's just like, I don't know, Trevor. I just feel like at the end of the day, he was a little bit overhyped coming into LA. I get it, the LA hype. And I feel like there were a little bit of unrealistic expectations that came with him. Cooper Kupp's been amazing this year. There's no doubt about it, Trevor. And I think Van Jefferson's been a nice emergence. I've always loved Van Jefferson because I've had him on my fantasy team for years now. So he's been really nice for them. But, at the end of the day, I think they have a few players who are overrated. Not only Matthew Stafford, but Von Miller. He's not what he once was, let's be honest. He makes an impact in the passing game, getting to the quarterback now and then, that he's not going to make a major impact otherwise. And then Odell Beckham, I've talked about him at length. I think he was an overrated acquisition. He's playing hurt. He got another back injury last week in his garbage time touchdown. So good job for playing him there and getting him hurt. That's good. And I just think that he won't be that much of an impact player for them outside of a few big plays. So, at the end of the day, I just want to say I think LA is a little overrated. And I think that their record now and their struggles the last month or so, in my opinion, I just think they've been struggling in general. At 7-4, I think this is about an accurate record, Trevor. They're a good team, not a tier one team.
I agree with you on some points and disagree on others. One, I was just crunching some numbers here, and we want to talk about how Stafford's been an overrated acquisition for them. Well, Matthew Stafford is on pace for a 5,100-yard passing season with 42 touchdowns. I mean, if you want to talk about that being an overrated acquisition, then what's a good acquisition, right? Because those are MVP caliber numbers. And I will give you this. The last couple of weeks, there's something off. And I know throwing in Odell Beckham Jr. while losing Robert Woods is kind of a double whammy, right? You're bringing in a new player who's not the easiest teammate to work with at times, and you're losing a pretty sure-handed number 2 receiver in Robert Woods. So there's definitely been some issues there for sure. I'll give you that.
Yep.
Excuse me. I think the bigger issue for the Los Angeles Rams is their defense. They've given up 28 points, 31 points, and 36 points in their last 3 weeks. They're giving up a lot of yards. They're giving up a lot of points. They're giving up a lot of big plays. I just think this defense is letting this team down a little bit. They have a lot of big name players, Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Von Miller, but this defense has some holes. Outside of Jalen Ramsey, their secondary is weak. And their D-line, Von Miller, right, like Ryan said, this is where I agree. Von Miller is not what he used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And now the recipe is double team Aaron Donald and go about your business. So there's definitely some holes with this Rams team. I agree. I do think they're going to figure it out, though, to the point where they'll be a threat in the playoffs. But here's the problem with the Rams. They're going to lose the division, more than likely. I think my Arizona Cardinals are going to win this division. Yeah. The only chance the Rams have is if my Cardinals – well, one, they have to beat my Cardinals on Monday night, December 13th. That's a must-win game or else the division's over. And number two, they're going to have to hope for at least another loss. So the Rams are more than likely going to have to go to Green Bay, Dallas, or Tampa, or potentially Arizona, but more than likely they're probably going to have to go to Dallas, Green Bay, or Tampa for a wild card game. And that is a tough road to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they can do it or they can't do it, but that is going to be a really, really tough road to the Super Bowl. And what I'm worried about is they went all in on this team. They brought in Odell Beckham Jr., albeit for, a couple $1 million in free agency. So that wasn't that big of a deal. But then you trade for a guy like Von Miller. You trade for a guy like Matthew Stafford, where you're giving up multiple years of first-round draft picks. And what are you going to have to show for it? A wild card loss in Tampa Bay? I mean, look, that's not a terrible loss, but that's not what you were hoping for when you assembled the team together. So I think the expectations are getting to the Rams a little bit. The pressure of, this team is Super Bowl or bust and they have no future because they've traded away so many draft picks. I think that pressure is starting to weigh on this team a little bit. But yeah, this is a very interesting team to follow. And the fact that they're struggling is not the worst thing for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have a bunch of other teams to get to, so I won't harp on this too much. But I just want to say, they've lost 3 straight games, Trevor, and none of the 3 have really been particularly close. I mean, they got walloped by Tennessee, they got rolled by San Francisco, and the game against Green Bay, like I said, was not half as close as it looks. The final box score looks like it was an 8-point game in the final score, but really it didn't feel like that for the entire second half. And I don't know, man. I doubt this team's ability to beat the top tier teams in the playoffs. Their schedule softens up. They play Arizona, but that's sandwiched by a game against Jacksonville and Seattle, both at home. So those are both probably wins, but I don't really know. I mean, and before we move on, Trevor, I know you brought up Stafford having a lot of yards, and I get that, he obviously has to be doing something right, but I think a lot of these yards are in garbage time. And that's not something I can back up, but I encourage people to watch Matthew Stafford and also pull up the advanced numbers on his accuracy. I just think he's been struggling. And also, really the last few weeks, Trevor, in the first, I believe, 8 weeks of the season, Trevor, Matthew Stafford threw 4 interceptions. The last 3 games, he's thrown 5. All right. So I'm not disagreeing with you, because you did say something's felt off the last few weeks, and you're right. I mean, the guy's he's thrown more picks in 3 weeks than he did in the first 8. So something is off. And he's also taken a lot more sacks in the first 8 games, Trevor. I believe he only got sacked 7 times. Last 3 games, he's gotten sacked 9 times. I mean, just something in general is off with the whole offense. It's funny, it coincided with Odell showing up, but I'm sure that's definitely just a coincidence. It's just kind of funny. But anyway, they got to figure it out, Trevor. Clearly something's off with both sides of the ball, as you highlighted the defense and their struggles. The offense has their fair share of struggles as well. So we'll see if the Rams can bounce back. They play the Jaguars this week, so I would think they can. But, you never know.
I will say this one final point. It's interesting you bring up the Rams because they're 7-4. They seem like they're fine, right? But who have they beaten this year? And that's an interesting thing for me, because they're kind of like Buffalo. Who have they really beaten to have all this hype around them? They beat Indianapolis by 3 points in week 2. They got killed by my Cardinals.
They did beat Tampa.
They did beat Tampa. All right. So other than Tampa, I guess that's a fair point. In week 3, albeit. Yep. Who have they really beaten? And you look at the other playoff teams they've played, they've gotten smothered by my Cardinals, by Tennessee, San Fran, and that Green Bay game. Yep. So there are definitely some problems with this Rams team. I do think I trust in Sean McVay, and I do think Matthew Stafford will figure it out to the point where they're going to be a tough team to beat come playoff time. I still believe in them come playoff time. And they're not going to win the division, but you don't want to play on wild card weekend.
Yeah, I mean, no, I definitely agree. It'll be interesting these next 3 weeks, Trevor, because honestly, it would be quite the story if they started sliding and like lost to Jacksonville going into the Arizona game 7-5. Must win. It would be a really interesting story. So we'll see what happens there with these Rams. See if they can bounce back next week. But Trevor, we can move on to one of your teams you wanted to talk about. Take it away.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals just because I have been thoroughly impressed with them.
Sure.
It was easy to say that they were starting to slide after they got smoked by the Cleveland Browns 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
But since then, they have really shown up and they killed the Las Vegas Raiders. And then this past weekend, they absolutely killed – I can't even think of a better word to describe it. They just killed the Pittsburgh Steelers.
They did.
And I want to give the Bengals organization a lot of credit because this is historically not a very well-run organization. It's cheap. They don't have an indoor practice facility. They're the only team in the NFL without an indoor practice facility. And they've let a lot of big-name players go in the past, I would say. But what I will say is this. Their last 3 big offensive draft picks, they've all hit home runs. Joe Burrow's a home run. T. Higgins, I would consider a home run. And Jamar Chase is a home run. So this team, the skill players with Joe Mixon, this core of skill players is going to be really good for the next at least 5 years. I mean, maybe longer. Running backs have a shorter life than quarterbacks and receivers. But I would say for the next 5 years, they have a really, really good assortment of skill players. And their defense is overperforming. I look at their last 2 games, they've given up 13 points and 10 points. And I think they have a nice young safety in Jesse Bates. I think they got a couple guys up front who they picked up in free agency. So the defense will come along where they need to build this team, though, for the future. And this is the final step, is they need to build this team around the line of scrimmage. I think their defensive line and their offensive line are the weaknesses of this football team. I'm sure they will address that in the draft. I don't know, though, because it's Cincinnati. They're always kind of hit or miss. But I want to give this organization a lot of credit for hitting on draft picks. They have their quarterback, and they're playing really good football right now. And I think this team is playing good enough football to win the division. I get Baltimore's 8-3, but they smoked Baltimore earlier in the season, and Baltimore's really not playing that good of football right now. So for me, it is not that crazy to assume that Cincinnati can win this division.
Look, here's the thing. It's definitely not crazy, Trevor, but I stand by it. I don't see it. I think this team is too up and down. Look, we've talked about it this year, Trevor. You were the one who first brought it up. You thought that they were 1 year away, and I agreed with you. I still agree with you. Okay, from what you said back then. Here's the thing, Trevor. I mean, this is a strange team. They walloped Baltimore. They destroyed the Steelers. They destroyed the Raiders, but they got rolled by the Browns. They lost to the Bears. They lost to the Jets. I mean, some of these losses are just very puzzling.
Yeah.
And Trevor, to me, here's what it comes down to. Right? It comes down to when they play a top 10 defense, they lose games. Bears, a back-end top 10 defense, maybe like top 12. The Bears have a very good defense. Right? Their offense is just horrendous. They play the Packers, they lose. Close game, but the Packers have a very good defense.
Very winnable game.
Yes. The only outlier is the Jets, but the Browns have look, the defense has come together over this last month. The defense has been very good this year overall. Point is, in all of these games, Trevor, all of their losses, Joe Burrow has been sacked at least 3 times and turned the ball over at least once. And all of them, he's turned it over multiple times except for one. So, like, the recipe for them, Trevor, is limit the turnovers because Burrow has been susceptible to turnovers, Trevor. And in their last 2 games, he's only had 1 pick, which is why they're winning, which is why they're really smoking these teams because he's not turning the ball over. And he's limiting the sacks. I mean, he's gotten sacked a handful of times, but nowhere near what he was getting sacked in these losses. And so I think that, they have the potential to beat anybody. But at the end of the day, I think they could easily go 3-0 in these next 3 games, Trevor. They could go 0-3. They play the Chargers, the Niners, and the Broncos. 2 home games, then Broncos in Denver. They could easily lose all 3 of those. Like, we both know it. The Chargers, quality team. The Niners, playing better football, a good team. The Denver Broncos, their defense is really good, and that's what worries me. In Denver, hostile environment, Bengals could easily lose that game to a fired up, really a team that's playing pretty well, Broncos team. So my point is I just don't trust the Bengals, I think is what it is, Trevor. I don't know which version is going to show up any given Sunday. And I think that a team like that, you can't trust to make the playoffs. Certainly they can, but if I had to put money on it, I'd say they don't. I still think they're 1 year away before they close out, some of these games. I really think they go 1-2 these next 3, maybe even 0-3.
I do agree with you. They do have 3 tough football games coming up. Yeah. But 2 of them are at home. So I do think they will win at least one of those 2 at home. And Denver, if we want to talk about inconsistent teams, Denver's up there with the best of them.
True.
No, I agree with you largely on a lot of those points. I did say Cincinnati was a year away, and I still think they are a year away. But a team can make the playoffs and be a year away. And I think the big difference we've seen with Cincinnati, and this has been the difference in their last 2 games, is let's look at Joe Burrow's passing yards in these last 2 games. 148 yards against the Raiders and 190 passing yards against the Steelers. Those are his 2 lowest passing outputs of the season, yet those are probably 2 of their biggest wins of the season. The Steelers one is definitely their biggest win of the season. The difference has been Joe Mixon and this running game. And that's where I want to give the offensive line some credit. Joe Mixon has been running rapid these last couple games. The offensive line has given up a lot of sacks. It's not a great pass blocking O-line, but if they can run the ball and take some pressure off of Joe Burrow and not force Joe Burrow to throw the ball 40 or 50 times a game, I think Cincinnati can be a very, very difficult opponent for a lot of teams. And like I said, they have the skill position players. They have Joe Mixon. So I do think they have the talent to put it all together. But I think they're a little immature, a little young, as Ryan said. And I think a year away is a good way of putting it. But everything's out in front of them, and we can talk about this team being a year away all we want, but everything is right there for the taking, and they control their own destiny. So I got to give them credit on that front.
Yeah, no, they do. It'll certainly be interesting. I just, I'm going to stand by what I said. I really think that they're a year away. And look, you're right. Maybe a playoff team could be a year away. I personally think in the NFL, I think it's much harder than the NBA to make the playoffs. And so I just feel like it's more meaningful in the NFL is what I'm trying to say. So I think that when a team makes the playoffs, I feel like it's a big stepping stone, particularly for a young team like the Bengals. So like for me, if I'm the Bengals and I make the playoffs, that is a success. That's not me being a year away. Like, sure, it's a year away from being a Super Bowl contender, but it's exceeding my expectations. And so, I don't think that will be I don't think they'll get there this year. But we'll see what happens. They certainly can. They're 7-4. They're in position to do so. So we will see. But Trevor, I think I'm going to move on from this and move on to my second team that I wanted to talk about. And that was the Washington football team, Trevor. And I want to talk about this team because, what a turnaround. I mean, am I right? I mean, wow. I mean, this team, Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they've won 3 straight now. They beat the Seahawks this past week on Monday night, which, by the way, what a great game. What a great hard-fought win by Washington.
Crazy ending
Because their kicker was hurt and they had to go for it on 4th downs deep in Seattle territory. It was wild. And by the way, they got horrifically scammed by the referees on an overturned touchdown call on 4th down.
Agree.
Logan Thomas caught that football. He had possession. His hand was underneath the ball. The ball didn't move nearly enough for them to overturn the call on the field. I thought it was a terrible call by the refs. So, I know they wanted a close game, but man, I mean, don't make it so obvious, please. I mean, the Seahawks are bad. Just let them lose. I agree. I mean, great win by Washington. Taylor Heinicke, Trevor, I don't think he gets talked about enough. And I think everyone around the league knows that he's sort of a grindy, hard fighting player who never gives up. And he's kind of an underdog kind of guy. But seriously, Trevor, he makes some nice throws. And the thing I want to highlight about Taylor Heinicke is not just like his ability to throw the ball down the field, which he can to scary Terry McLaurin. I mean, he's done it consistently all year. But the fact that he makes throws when he's under significant duress in the pocket, and he does it from strange angles. It reminds me of Mahomes in a way, Trevor. He'll throw it sidearm. He'll throw it, falling. He'll just do it in strange ways that most quarterbacks can't do. And he'll find ways to get the ball to his players, get the ball to his receivers. And, I just really like to watch him. He's a fun guy to watch. He's an easy guy to root for. And, I'm kind of glad, I know you never want to root for an injury, but I'm kind of glad Fitzpatrick was injured early in the year because it's given Heinicke, a chance to prove himself. And I really think, Trevor, this Washington team can make the playoffs. They're in a wild card spot now, Trevor, in the NFC with a win against Seattle. They slotted in, I believe, to the final wild card spot in the NFC. So, I mean, at 5-6, Trevor, they're right there. I think they have, a golden opportunity in front of them. And I don't know their schedule upcoming off the top of my head, but I believe they play the Raiders next week. So
A
that's a
lot of
winnable.
divisional games. A lot of
Yeah.
divisional
Oh,
games.
yes, you're right. Wow. They play the Raiders, followed by games against the Cowboys and Eagles back to back to back to back. So two
Their
against each
last
of them.
their last
All
5 games of the season are divisional games.
yes. So massive games coming up, Trevor. Honestly, they can beat all of them. They could also lose all of them. They're a very up and down team. This defense has finally come together. It was horrible the first part of the season, Trevor, giving up 20 plus points to every single opponent except for one in the Denver Broncos in the first few weeks. But they finally battened down the hatches, stepped up, taken it up a notch, and beaten the Buccaneers, Panthers, and Seahawks, Trevor. So, I think this team's been fun to watch. They're easy to root for. And I really think that if this defense continues to improve and Heineke keeps fighting the way he's been and playing at the level he's been playing, which is a level of winning quarterback play, he's doing just enough to win. And that's all they need with the talent they have on the defensive side of the ball. So, I just wanted to highlight them because I think not only could they make the playoffs, I think they can make the playoffs as a team that can threaten others and maybe steal a playoff win from someone who's a Super Bowl contender.
A lot of good points there. And Washington, I'm happy that they're playing well. Their organization's been linked to a lot of bad stuff. Their owner, Dan Snyder, seems to be in a little bit of hot water. So it's definitely not been an easy year for them. And then last year they go with the name change and they lose Ryan Fitzpatrick week 1. So this organization has definitely overcome a lot of adversity this season alone. I have a couple things to say about this team. One, I agree with you completely on Taylor Heineke. I think he is a very unique quarterback in that he does what he does well, yet he can make enough good throws and he doesn't make enough mistakes for you to be like, okay, he's not good enough to start. So he can scramble, he can run, he can make plays out of nothing, and he makes enough good throws to where you're like, okay, this guy's a good enough start. This guy can play starting quarterback in the NFL. He has thrown 10 interceptions in 11 games, which isn't great, but he's progressively getting better as the season plays on. The other big thing I wanted to talk about was the Washington football team's running game. I think their running game with Antonio Gibson getting healthier these last few weeks has been huge. That's how they've been able to close out games, right? The game against Tampa Bay, they went on that 19-play, 11-minute drive to seal it. Carolina, they went on a long drive. Seattle, they went on another 16-play, 9-minute drive. And if it wasn't for a horrendous overturn of a touchdown, that would have sealed the game as well. So I think this team has completely turned it around at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Their defensive line's been playing a lot better as well. They got after Russell Wilson on that Monday night game. They've been able to establish the run. And Taylor Heineke is a good enough quarterback to where he won't lose you football games. And I think that's very important. And Washington is one of those teams where, like I said with Cincinnati, everything is out in front of them. They have 5 divisional games to finish the season. They can win the division. The way Dallas is playing right now, they played Dallas twice. They control their own destiny. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But for Washington, they should feel really good about where they're at right now because they have a lot of winnable games and a lot of divisional games down the stretch.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with a lot of what you said there. I think it'll really be interesting. And, before we move on, Trevor, I just wanted to highlight this Seahawks team. And I know we're not going to talk about the Seahawks tonight, but I just wanted to do a little preview. For next week, Trevor, I want to talk about next week. Is Pete Carroll on the hot seat? Should he be considered a guy who's on the hot seat? Should he be fired? I mean, we can talk. I think we should talk about that next week. I think we should get into it, particularly if the Seahawks lose next week again. But I think the answer is definitely probably. But we'll get into that next week, Trevor. They're 3-8. Russell Wilson and that offense obviously he's elite. Lockett and Metcalf are elite. But they can't seem to get a first down. It's ridiculous. It is actually unbelievable how inept they are. Really on both sides of the ball. And offense is inexcusable. Defense, at least, has a lack of talent. But the offense, that's inexcusable. But, Trevor, that is for next week's podcast. I wanted to just kind of bring that up just for a second there because I think that it's been really surprising to everybody. But, Trevor, I know you have one more team to get to. And it's in the same division as the Seahawks. It's, the San Francisco 49ers?
Here come the 49ers. And this is a team that I would not want to play in the playoffs. They do several things well. One, they run the ball really well.
Yes.
Elijah Mitchell is a really good running back. Deebo Samuel is an elite running back, apparently, and an elite wide receiver. He's just a freak athlete. And Number two, I think they're well coached. I think Kyle Shanahan has really figured out this offense. And it's weird, Ryan. We talk about how this is a passing league. This is a quarterback's league. I think it is. But having that balance in the running game has been very important. I mean, a lot of the teams that we've talked about today that have been playing good football, Cincinnati has picked it up running the ball. Washington's been running the ball more effectively. San Francisco has always been an effective running team with a great running scheme with misdirections and outside zones and counters and stuff like that. So I think it's very important to understand that as much as it is a passing league, it is still very important to be able to run the ball.
Yes.
And I think the formula for San Francisco is run the ball more than you pass. Make it easy on Jimmy Garoppolo. Set up play action. Make the game simple for him. And he'll make enough throws to George Kittle or Deebo Samuel, and he'll make enough plays to where he won't lose you football games. It's similar to Taylor Heineke. Run the ball effectively, incorporate some passing, and he won't turn the ball over. He won't make enough mistakes for you to lose games. And I see that with Jimmy Garoppolo and this 49ers team. Their defense is a little bit of a concern. It's been very inconsistent this year. I do think they have a good front seven, but that secondary is a problem. But they're 6-5, and right now they're peaking. And I think sometimes it takes a while for teams to peak, but San Francisco seems to be peaking at just the right time. And the way that the Rams are playing, this team could jump into that first wildcard spot, I think, which might not even be a good thing depending on who you play. But clearly San Francisco is making its push for the playoffs, and they will be a playoff team in the NFC this year.
Yeah, look, Trevor, I will say I apologize. I disrespected the San Francisco team earlier in the season when they were struggling. They had started off, I believe, Trevor, 3-4.
They got smoked by my Colt McCoy Cardinals.
They did, yeah. And this team, Trevor, I'm going to say it, and it won't happen, but this team could easily, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they won out. Look.
Whoa,
Trevor,
one out.
Look, I'm just saying, look at their schedule, Trevor. They play the Seahawks, the 3-8 Seahawks. You expect at this point the Niners to win that game. You play the Cincinnati Bengals, who I think are super up and down, super hot and cold. Definitely can come out and win that game.
Fair.
They play the Atlanta Falcons, one of the most winnable games there. The Tennessee Titans, another very inconsistent, very injured team.
Yeah.
The Houston Texans, that's a win. And then they play the Los Angeles Rams. Now, look, being realistic, they won't win out. My point being is they have a very nice schedule coming in here, Trevor. The hardest game being the Rams game. And I'm not afraid of the Rams if I'm the 49ers. I'm not afraid of the Rams if I'm any team
smoked them 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. So I think that this team could easily win out. They won't, but they have a very nice schedule coming in. And look, Trevor, they have one of the most creative coaches in football. They have a solid defense. As always, it's finally getting healthy. Last year, they were destroyed by injuries. And, I'm glad you brought up Jimmy G because I'm actually going to give him a little bit of praise, Trevor. He has gotten a fire lit under him, particularly these last 3 games, Trevor. And I wonder if getting Trey Lance had something to do with it because, this guy, his job was – they were coming for his job. Honestly, you watch Trey Lance score a touchdown week 1. Opening quarter, and it's like, well, is this guy going to be splitting with Jimmy G, maybe taking over by week 4, week 5? Who knows? Jimmy G is out for a few weeks. Trey Lance isn't that good. Jimmy G comes back, and he's a new man. He's a new guy. And Trevor, you say he's a game manager. He can make all the right throws. He's like Taylor Heineke. He's actually been a little bit better than that this year. He's actually, Trevor, 6th in depth of target this year. So he's actually throwing the ball down the field compared to other quarterbacks. He's actually getting it down the field. And that's not something he used to be able to do. That's something that Shanahan had to. He does, no doubt. But that's something Shanahan had to scheme up. He couldn't just trust Jimmy to make throws down the field. He was kind of like how Tua has been, right? He's kind of like how Jared Goff was in LA, right? McVay had to scheme stuff for Jared Goff, play to his strengths and against his weaknesses. That's what Shanahan had to do with Jimmy G. And now this year, Trevor, he's having to do a little bit less, which opens up the playbook significantly for a coach like Kyle Shanahan. So I got to give credit to Jimmy G. And also, Trevor, on their winning streak, last 3 games, he has 1 turnover in these 3 games. A single turnover. And that's a recipe for success. 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. You're going to win most of your games when you have that TD to pick ratio. So credit to Jimmy G, credit to this team. They've stepped it up. Had 3 convincing wins. Really 2 very convincing wins against the Rams and the Jaguars. And then a nice hard-fought victory against the Vikings last week. But Trevor, you're definitely right. This team is dangerous. I think they can make the playoffs and have an upset in the playoffs.
I'll say one thing, though. They did not receive a lot of scheduling breaks. They only have 2 home games left, and they got to go to Tennessee and to Cincinnati. So that's 2 East Coast trips coming up. So not a lot of scheduling breaks for this team, but they will be a playoff team, Ryan. I can bet on that. So I think that will conclude our NFL discussion for today. I think that was pretty productive. I think we covered a lot there.
No, we did.
And, in the next couple of weeks, we'll definitely get more in depth about potential playoff scenarios and matchups and, what teams should be doing. Should they start, maybe lose a game to avoid playing a team or not? That's always going to get interesting as the year goes on. But we got I think we got 5 weeks left in the NFL regular season. So it's really coming down to it.
Yep.
With that being said, we will be switching gears now to a brief NBA discussion. Ryan wants to talk about one team. I'll talk about my Phoenix Suns, and I think we can kick it off with the Phoenix Suns, Ryan, who made a big splash last night. And look, I'm a Suns fan, but I think this is worth talking about. The Phoenix Suns made a big splash last night, defeating the Golden State Warriors, 17-game win streak, now the best team in the NBA for the time being. They do play Golden State again Friday night in San Francisco. And Ryan, if you don't mind, I will take this here. I'll discuss my Phoenix Suns, and then I'll let you counter. First, though, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to get all my overreactions out of the way. Overreaction number 1, this Phoenix Suns team has no weaknesses. And that might not even be an overreaction. It's an elite defensive team. It's an elite offensive team. It's led by a Hall of Fame point guard. It has a killer scorer. It has a rim protector. It has 3-and-D, lengthy wing players. Where's the weakness on this team? The weakness was, they don't have a backup center. JaVale McGee has been very good. They don't have enough bench scoring. He didn't play well last night, but Landry Shamet, he's been good he's been good in that role. Cam Johnson, bench scoring. Cameron Payne, bench scoring. Where's the weakness on this Suns team? I want to know. Number 2, Mikal Bridges is the best on-ball defender in the NBA right now. Present time, Mikal Bridges is the defensive player of the year. He held Steph Curry to his lowest shooting percentage in his career. I get it was an off night for Steph Curry, but he has never had a worse shooting night in his entire career, and Mikal Bridges guarded him the majority of that time. And Ryan, look, you got to give Mikal Bridges some praise. He is an elite defender, and he is right now Defensive Player of the Year. Now, my true analysis on this team, unbiased, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to overreact here. I got my overreactions out of the way. The Warriors scare me a little bit, and here's why. Some of their role players are better than I thought. Jordan Poole's a little bit better than I thought. Maybe he just had a hot hand last night. Otto Porter Jr., I think, is better than I thought. It might just be recency bias because he played a really good game.
No,
the Warriors were giving us all we could ask for, and they didn't have Klay Thompson. I thought the Suns were going to win this game fairly easily. We ended up winning this game. I wouldn't say easily, but we did win. We took over the game at the end. So I shouldn't say it was an easy win, but we did take over the game at the end.
Close the whole way.
So what I noticed was last night, and it felt like a playoff game. There was a lot of turnovers, a lot of defense, and a lot of physicality, not as many fouls called. I was kind of yelling at the TV. I'm like, that's usually a foul. That's usually a foul. Well, maybe in this game, it's not a foul. So the Warriors are going to be an interesting matchup for us when they get Klay back. And I think that's what everyone's been kind of waiting for 2 years. I was impressed with them. Steph Curry had the worst shooting night of his career, and they still ended up, coming very close to winning that basketball game. My final takeaway was I was very proud of the way my Suns played when Devin Booker went down. And I think that said a lot about my team, right? I think it shows that it kind of plays into my where's the weakness argument on this team. And then it also shows that this team can win multiple ways. This team can win with DeAndre Ayton giving you 25 and 15. This team can win with Devin Booker giving you 35 like he did in New York. Or this team can win with elite defense and team scoring with guys like Jay Crowder stepping up, guys like Cam Johnson stepping up, Chris Paul being Chris Paul, Landry Shamet hitting a big shot at the end. So for me, my takeaways are the Warriors are going to be tough. The Suns are the best team in the NBA, and my Suns can win a lot of different ways. And that is very, very important come playoff time. Final thing I'd like to say, sorry, I'm taking a long time on this.
Don't worry.
This is huge. And this is the biggest thing I wanted to say. The Phoenix Suns are and this is not an overreaction, are the best clutch team in the NBA. Oh. Devin Booker is a 70%. This is a real stat. Devin Booker shoots 70% in clutch time. Chris Paul and Devin Booker's clutch rating, whatever that means, is 138. That's the highest in the NBA. It is huge that a team can win close games and win in clutch situations, and my Suns are doing that, and that is why we are the best team in the league right now. Go ahead.
Look, I'll have an overreaction as well. Or maybe not an overreaction, but I'll have a bold statement. You ready? This Warriors-Suns game changed nothing for me. Okay, this Warriors-Suns game didn't change anything for me. Look, we all knew both of these teams were elite. We all knew that the Suns were really good. We all knew that the Warriors were really good. Okay, Trevor didn't know, but we all knew Jordan Poole was having a career year. This guy's been he's been really good this year.
He's been a certified good role player.
He will win Sixth Man of the Year this year. This guy
He's starting. He can't win Sixth Man of the Year.
When Klay Thompson comes back, he won't start another game.
Oh, okay, well, that's fair.
So he'll be the
sixth man. Now he is starting. He's out of the running for Sixth Man.
Yeah, Klay will be back in 2 weeks. Look, another thing. Otto Porter's been sensational for the Warriors. Trevor, don't be surprised again if these bench players step up for the Warriors. Gary Payton was a plus 16. Or a plus 17 in box plus minus. I don't like using box plus minus for individual games, but for bench players, it's actually decent. Especially when it stands out as much as Gary Payton. He was a plus 17. No one else is better than a plus 10 on the entire team. Gary Payton looks really nice. He can't shoot threes, but he can do everything else. Otto Porter can't shoot threes. Sure. He's shot almost 50% from the three this year, and he shot 50% last night. Bjelica had a horrible game, but he's been really good from this year. Point being, Trevor, look, the Phoenix Suns are really good. Both of these teams can win on any given night against each other. I wasn't surprised the Suns won. I won't be surprised when the Warriors win on Friday because it's in Golden State. Curry is going to be angry. It's Steph Curry. You're not going to hold him to 4 for 21, no matter how well you defend him. And I will say, Mikal did a sensational job. I believe it was 33 possessions, Trevor. It was either 33 or 37 possessions last night where Mikal guarded him, and he did a great job. I mean, when you hold a guy to that shooting percentage, some of that's defense, some of that's an off night, but definitely some of that's defense. And you can't just say, oh, Curry had an off night. No, I'd love to say that, but a lot of that was the defense. And they were doubling, even tripling Curry on off-ball screens, something that Curry loves to do. He loves to run off-ball screens, one or two of them running across underneath the basket. Didn't work. He wasn't open. He wasn't hitting shots. I think he had at least 3 air balls, Trevor, last night. He was looking off.
Couple block shots, too. DeAndre Ayton switching roles, blocking shots.
So the Suns defense looked really good. I was really I respect that. I didn't really expect it to be as good as it was. And they did a great job there. The one thing I do want to say, Trevor, is DeAndre Ayton needs to stop at the fadeaway mid-range jump shots.
I agree with you. I was screaming about that.
I mean, look, here's the thing. When you have the Suns have 4 shooters on the floor when they're starting lineups in. Jay Crowder, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and Mikal Bridges. Yeah. They can all hit threes and mid-range jumpers, really. All of them, all 4 of them. Cam Johnson, when he's in. 4 shooters on the floor most of the game for the Suns. That's why their offense is so good. Same with the Warriors. They got 4 shooters on the floor pretty much at all times. So I both these offenses are elite, right? DeAndre Ayton shouldn't be taking fadeaway mid-rangers with 4 shooters on the floor. You're going to get a better shot from one of those guys than taking a fadeaway mid-range
Especially when you're the biggest guy on the floor by 4 inches and 30 pounds. Kevon Looney is undersized. Draymond Green is undersized. He should be backing them down and taking a jump hook.
Can I say, Trevor, and you watch more Phoenix than I do, but before we move on, DeAndre Ayton sometimes feels like he plays too soft. He feels like he plays underneath his size.
That's been my complaint with him his entire career. He is just he's not physical enough. And part of that is how the game is officiated in the present day NBA, right?
It's better than it was though now. It's better than it was.
It's better, but it's still geared towards guards and offensive fouls the way they're called, where big men try and seal and get post position and guys are able to just flop and fly backwards and get the whistle. You know, part of that is officiating, but more of that is DeAndre Ayton, for whatever reason. And I don't know why coaching doesn't get on. I don't know why he's taught to shoot fadeaway mid-range shots every time he touches the ball in the post. For me, it's simple. If they don't double DeAndre Ayton and he has an undersized guy on him, it's 2 dribbles to the middle of the basket, jump hook. It happened 3 or 4 times in the first 4 minutes of the game. Jump hook, jump hook, jump hook. He made it every time. And then he started going to these ridiculous fadeaway mid-range jump shots. And I'm like, why are you bailing out the defense? Why would you let 6'8" Draymond Green get away with that? Back him down and take a jump hook over him, or he's going to foul you. And he's a good enough free throw shooter to make foul shots. So I completely agree with you on the DeAndre Ayton point. He did play solid last night.
No, he did.
He played well. But as good as a game as he played, it didn't look like a max contract game. I saw
Exactly.
I saw too many flaws in that game to give him $175 million over 5 years. So it's the timidness in his game. I don't like it, and it's always been there. It's always been a problem.
Yeah, no. So here's the thing, Trevor. Tell me I'm wrong. Would you? I'd rather look, Robert. You can make fun of Sarver all you want, but the guy made the right choice not giving Ayton the max. Ayton's probably gonna walk, and I think it will be the right choice. You'd much rather have a guy
walk. I don't know if he's gonna walk.
Okay, but let me say this: if he does, I think it's okay. It's much better having a guy I think Jared Allen's better than DeAndre Ayton right now, but that's besides the point. A guy like Clint Capella, I'm telling you, a guy like that for $70 million less can do.
I agree with you
because you don't need a guy like Ayton taking mid-jump. You don't need him playing outside of right around the basket like JaVale McGee. That's all you need from him. With 4 shooters on the floor the Suns have, that's all you need.
If Ayton is so adamant on taking mid-range jump shots, do what Joel Embiid does: face up. Don't fade away. Face up the defender and square up your shoulders and your feet and take a jump shot. Don't fade away and throw some bullshit up and hope it goes in. It goes 100%. In a couple times, but it also is airballed a couple times. And also, Joel Embiid gets to the free throw line 10 or 12 times a game. DeAndre Ayton does not. That's physicality. I need that out of DeAndre Ayton if I want him to be a max player going forward.
Yep.
And this is my conspiracy theory before we move on, Ryan. Let DeAndre Ayton walk and trade for Kevin Durant.
Okay.
I'm telling you, Ryan, him and Devin Booker, don't underestimate that relationship. Kevin Durant's coming. All right, maybe not, but that would be my dream.
Yeah, let's not.
Think about that starting five, though, real quick next year. Chris Paul, Devin Booker, McHale, Kevin Durant, JaVale McGee. You bring Crowder and Cam Johnson off the bench.
That'd be my worst nightmare.
Kevin Durant anyway, just saw his Brooklyn Nets get blown out by my Suns. He saw what Devin Booker can do. I'm just throwing that out there, but go ahead.
No, look, I don't have anything else. I mean, I was just saying that'd be my worst nightmare. But look, Trevor, we can move on. I want to move on, please.
Yeah, we can move on.
To my team in the NBA, and I'll make it brief because really I don't have too much to say about any teams in the NBA other than, of course, my team, my Cleveland Cavaliers. But we'll wait till that next week after we continue our winning streak. But I want to talk about the Dallas Mavericks, Trevor, because this team, they're frauds. Look,
they're frauds.
They're 11-9, I believe, Trevor, and they are not as good as their record shows. Trevor, they have 1 win against teams above 500 this year. They are 1-7 against teams above 500 this year after losing to Cleveland 2 nights ago. They're not a good team. It reminds me of LeBron and his first stint in Cleveland. Luka has no help around him. Kristaps is a perimeter player. They're trying to get him more work inside, but I mean, the guy's taking 5.5 threes a game and making 30% of them. I mean, I don't want that from my 7-1 player. That's not what I envisioned when I got him for $100 million. I mean, I'm disappointed. Tim Hardaway's only shooting 33% from 3. I mean, Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber are playing well, but that's it. Reggie Bullock's been horrible, shooting 27% from 3.
He has been really bad.
I mean, this team isn't good, and I feel bad for Luka Doncic. I really do. Because I don't know how much longer you can take it, Trevor. If I'm Luka, do I want to sit here and I mean, I know I'm young. I'm 22, but do I want to waste away my years with a Dallas team that's as bad as the 08 Cavs? I don't. They're average on both ends of the floor, Trevor, and that's with Luka. They're 21st in offensive rating, 20th in defensive rating. That's bottom third of the league in both offense and defense. That's not going to fly. I think that their downfall is getting rid of Seth Curry, Trevor. I think everything's gone downhill since then, especially because Seth Curry's become he's really blossomed into a really nice number 2 piece for the 76ers. And it's tough to watch if you're a Mavericks fan. I just, at the end of the day, I think this team might not even make the playoffs. You know, I wouldn't be terribly surprised, Trevor, if they fell outside the top 8, maybe even the top 10. I know it's bold, but I'm telling you, they have Luka and no one else. They can't beat teams above 500. Their schedule's been easy so far. I think when it gets harder, when the going gets tough, I'd be nervous.
I'm not going to go as far as you, but I will say this. What do you call a team that beats all the bad teams and loses to all the good teams?
Average.
Call that an average team. And that's what Dallas is. They're an average basketball team with a superstar. And that's why they've kind of had this elevated, status of a team that's this close. They need Porzingis and they're a championship team. Oh, well, they need one more piece in their championship team. Well, the reality is they're an average basketball team with a superstar. And Luka Doncic has been playing really good this year. I mean, he's averaging 25, 8, and 8. I mean, those are MVP caliber numbers. Even Porzingis is having a decent year. He's averaging 20 points a game. I think the issue with the Dallas Mavericks is they've whiffed on a lot of these guys that they brought in. And they got rid of Seth Curry. They've whiffed on, I believe they had Josh Richardson last year. He was a bust. They tried bringing in Reggie Bullock, who had a good year for the Knicks. He's been a bust. Porzingis has not lived up to the hype.
Nope.
I'm trying to think who else that they've tried to bring in that hasn't panned out. I think those are enough examples for now. But yeah, they just haven't been able to build around Luka effectively. I think that's the moral of the story. Luka's been great, and they haven't given him another quality piece. Porzingis has been okay in spurts, but he's a defensive liability at best. And the rest of this team is pretty average to bad. So for me, Dallas is an okay team. They'll make the playoffs just because the Western Conference is in a down year.
It is not great now.
But they're not a threat. And I think that's going to definitely eat away a little bit at Luka, because Luka has all the individual accolades you could want at his age, but he hasn't won anything yet. He hasn't even won a playoff series yet. So he might get a little impatient, as you said. And who knows? He might come to Phoenix in the next couple of years. Everyone might come to Phoenix. Who knows?
Man, Trevor, I can't wait till Chris Paul retires. But anyway, until that time, Trevor, the Suns are going to be good.
We'll bring in Luka and KD. We'll be fine.
Trevor's going to keep asking about and talking about all these free agents. But look, anyway, I think that about wraps up our NBA discussion. I think it'll be interesting to watch this next week, what happens. Golden State Suns rematch in Golden State certainly will be fun. And the Cleveland Cavaliers win streak will probably continue. But Trevor, we can move on to our final topic of this evening, which is once again college football. And, Trevor, I don't want to speak for you, but I think this past week of football in college specifically was fantastic. Thank you. I mean, there were some great games. Seriously.
Amazing games.
And I'm going to start with the couple in the top four, Trevor. I mean, you have easily the Alabama-Auburn game, probably the best game of the week, quadruple overtime game. By the way, I just want to say, Trevor, having them go for 2-point conversions only after is horrible. A horrible rule. Horrifically bad.
No, I don't hate it.
No, it's terrible. You need to start teams at even the 10-yard line. First and goal from the 10. Something. Like it's just so vanilla. Like a 2-point conversion.
No, I think what's the rule? You get one play to score a touchdown, and then you have to go for two. I think that's how it works, right?
No, it's just straight up 2-point conversion. It's straight up 2-point conversion.
It? Oh, yeah. Because you have to score and then get a stop. That's right. Okay,
yes.
That's right.
Yes. And I just don't like the rule. I think it reminds me of the rule in the MLB extra innings, Trevor, where you start a guy on second base on the 10th inning. I actually like that. I thought that was horrible. I mean, the defense didn't deserve to be on the 2-yard line. But anyway, look, that's an argument for another day. Auburn tried hard in the down year, almost did it. Would have been a miracle. Point being, Trevor, great game. John Mechie is a star. I think this guy's going to be really good in the NFL. I really like him as a receiver in Bama. I think he's going to be a really, really good, smaller Devontae Smith style player, explosive but undersized. I really like him for the NFL. And Bama's not that good. Those are my two takeaways there. Bama is beatable. Trevor, I think you said it last week, and you were totally right. Bama is a beatable team this year. They are third, and I think the committee has it right. But Bama's beatable. And I think that at the end of the day, they could easily lose to Michigan if that's who they end up playing. I really believe it. So it'll be interesting, Trevor, them against Georgia. I think Georgia wins, and then does Bama fall to the top four?
Yes, they better.
You think Oklahoma State flies into that 4 spot?
If Oklahoma State wins and Georgia wins, Alabama's definitely out of the playoffs.
If Oklahoma State loses and Bama loses, what happens?
Does Notre Dame
come up into
Notre
4?
Dame might slide in, which would be one of the craziest storylines in recent sports history.
Oh, I would hate that. I would hate that. My gosh.
Before we get to the coaching hires, which I think we'll talk about here in a couple minutes, I agree with the top 4. I would have put Cincinnati at 3 and Bama at 4. I really don't believe in this Bama team. They have a lot of holes. Their defense is not nearly as good as it's been in the past. I think Bryce Young's really good, but he didn't have a great day against Auburn. He made a couple big throws at the end to force overtime, but it was largely a tough day for him. And I do think Alabama's going to lose this weekend and finally not make the college football playoff, which would be a blessing because I'm dying to see some new teams make this playoff. I think Cincinnati, Georgia would be a great storyline. The underdog Cincinnati Bearcats lost to Georgia in the New Year's Six bowl game last year. There's a great headshot of a guy from Cincinnati watching Georgia celebrate the victory after the game. He's on the field watching the Georgia Bulldogs celebrate, lift the trophy, whatever. I think that would be an interesting storyline, a little revenge game on New Year's Day in the college football playoff. The rankings are correct. And I think the craziest thing of all is there's a realistic chance Notre Dame gets into the playoff. And I just don't understand. I can't comprehend that because look, I don't necessarily disagree with it. Like if Alabama loses and Oklahoma State loses, do you put in a 1-loss Notre Dame team or do you put in a 2-loss Big 12 champion Baylor? Do you put in a 2-loss Alabama?
It gets messy.
Or what I saw an even crazier thing where a two-loss Iowa team who's ranked 13th.
Okay.
It's crazy. It's a 1 in a million. But let's say Alabama gets blown out, Oklahoma State gets blown out, Cincinnati loses. I mean, look, crazier things, maybe crazy. I don't even know if crazier things have happened, but Iowa could maybe sneak in as a 2-loss Big Ten champion. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Michigan's going to win, but that's besides the point. I think the rankings are good. I'm happy that Cincinnati's in. I want Alabama to lose. That's the moral of that story, Ryan.
Trevor, I think we all wanted Alabama to lose this past week, but unfortunately that did not happen. Look, I don't have much to say on this. The rankings are correct. I think 2, 3, and 4 are all interchangeable. I think Bama could be 2. I think Michigan could be 4. I think Michigan could be 3. Like they beat Ohio State, but I think that they're beatable. I mean, they've already lost 1 game this year. I think they can easily lose to any of these top 4 teams. I think the committee has it right. I think it'll be fun. I hope it'll be interesting to see what happens in these conference championship games because it could really mess things up. And I think Trevor and I'll have a much more interesting discussion when that comes around. But for now, the committee got it right. I don't have much to say on it. I hope Cincy wins and stays in the top 4 because it's a great story. I think it'd be awesome if they won and made the title game as well. That'd be awesome.
No, I mean, the official college football rankings come out this Sunday, so we will know who's in the playoff in about 4 days' time.
There we have it. So we will see. But until then, Trevor, I kind of want to get to the more pressing thing for now, which is these coaching hires. And,
what I've been waiting for.
Yeah. And Trevor, do you mind if I just go ahead and start? I want to say 2 things. One, I gained respect for Brian Kelly and I lost respect for Lincoln Riley. It's as simple as that. And I think that most people agree. Look, and can I say kind of unrelated thing? College coaches shouldn't be allowed to just up and leave like this. Like it's the only coach who has, I believe, where they can just up and leave whenever they please.
I'll explain why that is.
You can explain why it is. I don't like it. I think it's disrespectful to the players, the organizations.
No, it does.
And I think that it just looks bad on the coaches' parts. And I think in particular, Lincoln Riley went out in a pretty strangely ugly way, Trevor. Seeing as he's been there for a while, it's really disappointing that it ended the way it did. He went to USC before the season was even over. I think this is kind of disrespectful. I don't like how all these coaches are doing that. The SMU coach, Sonny Dykes, went to TCU, flew in on a helicopter to TCU last night or 2 nights ago. Disrespectful, disgusting. I just don't like it. The players deserve better. And I think Lincoln Riley ran away from the SEC. Simple as that. Went to a black hole organization in USC.
Oh,
sure, he'll run the Pac-12.
Right.
It's prestigious. It's LA. It's California. It's a big environment.
Ryan's college football takes are ice cold right now.
It's a big market. I get it. They get all the big recruits. But you know what they don't do, Trevor? And you know what they haven't done in a decade? Win.
They haven't had the coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What if they had 5 coaches in a decade, Trevor? It seems like
exactly. They haven't gotten the coach.
Yeah. The next one's the right coach, Trevor. Lincoln Riley's the guy, just like the last 5 were.
Oh, come on. Lincoln Riley is miles better than Clay.
Lincoln Riley's a very good offensive mind. He's a great offensive mind. I just, I'm not a big fan of USC. They're always overrated. It's like Notre Dame, Trevor. It's like Texas, always overrated. And Notre Dame's actually good compared to these other 2. So it's a little different. But these 3 teams are always overrated, Trevor. And I'm disappointed Lincoln Riley ran away from the SEC. And I love that Brian Kelly went to LSU. Great hire for LSU, by the way. much better coach than who they had. He's a bona fide guy. He could coach. He coaches elite teams. Notre Dame's been elite for years because of him, and I think that that program will take a step back without him, and I think LSU will take a step up because of him. I like this hire. I respect Brian Kelly for going head into the SEC, toughest conference in football by a light year, and I'm excited for that. But Lincoln Riley and USC will certainly be interesting. But Trevor, I know you have stuff to say, so go ahead.
Brian mentioned a couple of interesting points. Why are these coaches up and leaving in the middle of the night during the season? Yep. The season isn't even horrible. Notre Dame might make the college football playoff, and Brian Kelly has to be out the door. Has to is the key word. It's all the college football NCAA's fault. It is not the fault of these coaches whatsoever. It is a shitty way to leave. I will completely agree with you on that front, Ryan.
It is.
Because it's not fair to the players. The players get screwed completely. But it's the early recruiting period. These coaches have to leave as soon as possible, put together a staff, and they have to immediately start recruiting players because early signing day is now a thing in college football, right?
Yeah.
These coaches, if you notice, these coaches will talk about the time between the end of conference championship week and New Year's Six bowl games in the college football playoff. They're out recruiting because of the early recruiting period now. They have to be out recruiting. That's why they have to leave so fast. It is completely the fault of the NCAA in college football, 0% the coach's fault, and it's why all of them do it. Do you because Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly would not want to leave like that. Nobody would. It's completely unfair to the players, but they almost have to, and they have to start recruiting right away.
Yeah, I just don't like it.
I don't like it either. I completely agree with you. Second thing I'd like to say, Lincoln Riley to USC is box office. It's Hollywood, and it's one of the great villain stories of 2021. You know, you're Lincoln Riley. You inherit this Oklahoma program from a beloved Bob Stoops. He elevates the program to a level that Bob Stoops couldn't quite get it to in his last few years. He's developing NFL quarterbacks. He's developing wide receivers. He's developing, he has an unbelievable program in place. He's gotten to the college football playoff 3 years in a row. Little old conservative rural Oklahoma, the little guy, the farmer. And what does Lincoln Riley do, Ryan? This is Hollywood right here. This is Hollywood writes these stories every day. Lincoln Riley turns into the ultimate villain of college football and leaves to the California Coastal Elite. I love it. I think it's drama. I want Oklahoma and USC to play week 1 next year. I would love nothing more than that football game. The shade that's being thrown around by the Oklahoma players where they're commenting on USC's Instagram, I think is fantastic.
Yep.
And I don't know. It's a good villain story. I like that.
Hey, Cliff Kingsbury to Oklahoma.
Look, I didn't think it was true. And then that response he gave was a little concerning, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
And then Brian Kelly to LSU. I love the hire for LSU. I think Brian Kelly's a tough-minded guy. He's not the nicest guy. There's definitely been stories where people have had their fair share of bad things to say about Brian Kelly. And then what was the thing he said after the Florida State game? He wants all of his players to die or something. I forgot what he said. That infamous
something weird. Yeah.
I forgot what he said. But it was something where you're like, okay, like calm down there a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's a home run hire. And I think another interesting side story to all this is where are Oklahoma and Notre Dame going to get their coaches? Because I do think there's a lot of good kids out there. I think Luke Fickell might go to one of these schools. I think Brent Venables has been a name thrown around. I heard Skip Bayless. I thought this was a very interesting one. He said Lane Kiffin to Oklahoma, and I think that would be a very interesting hire as well because Lane Kiffin, he's done a very underrated job at Ole Miss, but that is also a discussion for another day. Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, well, before we wrap this up, Trevor, I just want to say Notre Dame did actually hire a coach this afternoon. They hired
their coach, though, right?
No, it's their full-time coach. Their D coordinator, Marcus Freeman, is now their full-time head coach. Which I think is a good decision going in-house, not going for necessarily a big name. I think Notre Dame, they're a program who I think thrives on consistency. Brian Kelly had been there for a long time, and I like that they hired in-house. I think that's not always the flashy move, Trevor, but it could be the right move. And their defense has obviously been really good for many years. A lot of prospects, a lot of solid players.
I did not think they would. I see. I thought he was interim. I didn't think he'd be full-time.
No. Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman is expected to become the next head coach at Notre Dame. So, yes.
Good for him.
Yep. So that's that, but we'll see what Oklahoma does. I think they'll go get a big name. But Trevor, last thing, it's just disappointing because Bob Stoops built a dynasty at Oklahoma, and he handed the keys to Lincoln Riley.
Good.
And you just up and leave?
He destroyed the program. He didn't destroy it, but he definitely that program took a hit.
Elite talent going to the SEC. Look, I get it. You're scared. You go to bed at night, you're shaking thinking about the SEC. I understand.
Oh my goodness.
But to go
it's not about being scared of the SEC.
Go to Southern California. Oh,
look at the contract he got.
If I'm an Oklahoma player, I'm disgusted. I am, and that's what we see in the comments, Trevor.
They should be.
Yeah, they
should be.
And I'm disappointed. Is all. But look,
Ryan,
Trevor,
here's the thing, and this was a great quote. I'll end it with this. Joe Klatt said this on Fox Sports one today. He goes, everybody in their career, you and I, every person has a for sale price tag. Everybody has a price tag. And I think that was a great point. Look at the money that Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley are going to get. USC bought Lincoln Riley's 2 Norman, Oklahoma homes. Apparently, I don't think this is confirmed, for $500,000 each above asking price. And he's going to get some kind of 10-year, $110 million deal fully guaranteed. I mean, look at these contracts that these guys are getting. How can you say no to that? And you're in the mecca of college football. Southern California is the mecca of high school football talent, along with Texas. So if I'm Lincoln Riley, I would have done the same thing. And Oklahoma has every right to be angry. I would be angry too. Not trying to take that away from them.
Yeah, no, I get that. And look, we'll talk about this more next week, Trevor, when Oklahoma hires a head coach and there's more college football talk. But I think this is a good discussion. I'm glad we talked about these hires. They were big hires and big moves. And I think that good move for both programs. But I just, I don't know. Like I said, I gained respect for one coach, lost respect for another. But we'll see what happens, Trevor.
Like I said, it's the villain. He's the villain of college football.
You're definitely right. It's easy to hate him. And I think that he will definitely be hated by the vast majority of fans in college football now. Well, Trevor, I think that about wraps it up. I don't know if, Trevor, I'm sure you have any shout-outs you have for this week or not anything.
I got nothing. Shout out my Phoenix Suns. Keep it rolling. Oh, shout out Arizona sports. Best record in the NFL and the NBA right now. Keep going, boys. Gosh.
Yeah, I'll keep the shout out within my sports teams. Evan Mobley, shout out to my boy, casual 17, 9, 5, and 4 blocks tonight. Another easy game for him. He's kind of a freak.
Beat the Bulls the Heat B team. Good job.
Sure. No one gave us free passes when we barely lost to the Warriors and the Nets with our 4 starters out.
That's fair.
Okay. Look, Trevor, we're due some guys being out for the other teams. I'm happy about it. But look, keep disrespecting us. The league can keep sleeping on us. It's fine. We'll make the playoffs. We won't be slept on anymore. But Trevor, look, Mobley's going to win Rookie of the Year. It's been a good day. It's been a good week. Been a good podcast. And I hope everyone enjoyed. I think that about does it. And we will be back next week with more NBA, NFL, and college football discussion. So we'll see you then.